I want to welcome everybody to our February online meeting. And our guest artist tonight is Tara Sweeney, who you know, I think, from her beautiful watercolor and ink portraits. But she is very talented and does a diverse amount of work. And tonight she's going to be presenting starting points as it relates to her Castle in the City venue, which she has done numerous times before. And I just want to acknowledge her talent a little bit. She's a professor emeritus with Augsburg University, taught there for 25 years, drawing and painting. And she's a member of the National Watercolor Society, a signature member, as well as the Minnesota Watercolor Society, a signature member. And she's also appeared in the Transparent Watercolor Society shows in the past as well. So she's also been a past juror in our spring show. I think it was 2 years ago. And just recently, she and her son, Nate Christofferson, collaborated on a Minnesota Book Arts project and became a finalist in 2020. So that's quite significant, I think. And I think it just shows her diversity and talent that she has. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tara, and she will start with the starting points.
Okay, thank you, Art. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am going to talk about starting points, and I'll start by saying that I pronounce my name Tara, but I know who you're talking to if you call me Tara. Art and Deirdre and I just met tonight because, of course, we've all been, in our own little part of the world, and Zoom connects us. But before that, we just see each other in email. So it's great to be here and see all of you as well. I want to just lead off with an entry point, and here is the Turnblad Mansion, which is part of the American Swedish Institute campus here in Minneapolis. And I had the great delight of spending half a year in the historic salon. It was my studio creating this book. And the last time I did a demonstration for North Star, I hadn't even started this book yet, but we'd been awarded the grant to create it. So that is the book that
I don't know how to turn this up because I can't hear it. I did.
Hang on, let me see who that is.
So I'm going to take my face away in order to make my connection better. And I'm guessing that question is not for me, so I'm going to keep going. Anyway, here is a watercolor that I did of the actual castle, as it's called, the historic portion. And it's the end paper, the front end paper in book. And my son and I collaborated on this, but because all of the objects, including the castle, which was the biggest object that I worked from, could not leave the grounds, I was a hardship. It wasn't at all, but I had to work there. So it was really a really wonderful experience. And I illustrated these historic objects, for example, a Dala horse, and my son created the characters that explore each of these. And as the book, at the beginning of the book, there are just a few characters. And as the book goes on, all the ones that enter continue on. So by the end, it's quite a party. And we were delighted when a little more than a year ago, we learned we were finalists for the children's literature category for Minnesota Book Awards 2020. However, as we know, the state shut down. So that party was different too. And after we did that book, Nate and I did this. We didn't write this one, but we illustrated it. And I bring this out as well as this visual aid because I get asked, how did I get from a historic mansion to castles like this? And the answer is that I work with children, including my own and my grandchildren. And I find that collaborating really breaks open my heart and my mind to new ideas. Sorry about that. Which I enjoy. And I didn't always work that way, but once I did, I couldn't really stop. So here is working with kids helped me understand how to drop watercolor from great heights and watch what it did when it hit the page. And I use that. I'm just gonna see if this that makes the color a little better. So this was a very different project because I didn't have an object to look at. All I had was an idea. And my job was to create watercolor that expressed the emotions of what this little boy feels on his first day of school. And here you see these, what I call plops, a really technical term. I don't know if there's any watercolor book that says, here's how you make a plop, but it has become a favorite mark of mine. And kids taught me how to do it, mostly because there was a wild watercolor party going on. But you'll see in these pages that the techniques are really not about an object. They're wild marks and all about wet into wet and serendipity, quite a lot of serendipity. So I'm not going to read it to you, but I will just page through because this is a favorite page for me. It has the most plops of any, where the sponge dinosaur becomes a real dinosaur and plays in the mud with the boys. And then you can also see them on this page. So suffice it to say that it loosened me up. When you are working on one piece of paper with someone else, you have to trust yourself and them. And so it got me started thinking about how could I use that same approach in my own work. And this series of castles is only one of many what I call doodle approaches to ideas. I do doodle quite a lot. Move this one out of the way. And the kind of the benefit of that is I give myself permission to play. And so when I think about ideas, I pay attention to what I'm curious about and I follow my questions. So when I created the Ada Zau book with the Swedish Institute, that was a curiosity question where I said to myself, I wonder what would happen if I could do an alphabet book of historic objects and have a chance to hang out in this beautiful space and work and invite the public in to ask me questions about that. Well, I did it. And I wrote a grant to that effect. Minnesota State Arts Board was a big part of how we got started with that. So in this instance, I'm following a different curiosity question, but I wonder what will happen if, I'm gonna move my palette for a minute. I wonder what will happen if I start from a piece of paper that isn't white anymore. So what I did was I looked through, I kind of have a pile of not exactly failed paintings, but something that I started that maybe was a demonstration. This was another kid party where I was teaching them how to do pours and salt, and you can tell there was some plopping going on. I think if I put water on this, I could probably paint for months. There's so much ultramarine blue on there. But I saved it because what it is an invitation to me. The other thing that I like to do is to use this grid as a starting point for an idea. And it helps me think about how to lay out my idea and how to develop shapes. And it also helps me look at these starting points. In this case, this wild kid-based one. This is another one demonstration of a, sorry about the shadow here. I'm going to throw the other light back on in a minute. So kind of muddy, nothing great. And I can look at it this way, and I actually really like it this way because it feels like there's a big egg and a small egg and something's going to happen. And the fact that this is substandard technique doesn't really matter because I end up putting a lot more paint on it, more layers. This is a study for some dead roses. Literally, they were dead, dried. And that's kind of interesting of what would happen if I drop the castle over that. Sometimes I do a pour. That was a demonstration. I have another one underneath. You'll see some tape on there because I've set up some of the shapes that I'm going to do. So this was a demonstration of a background first for still life. And it just depends which one hits me. But I keep that pile and it allows me to reach for that. And it's a bit like collaborating with somebody else, sometimes literally, but in this case, well, in this case, it was a whole room full of preschoolers. So then the next thing that I like to do is, I work out. I often work from letters as starting points. I'm going to put this back on so you get a better. Ooh, that's maybe not better.
That's a little bright. Yeah,
Yep.
a little bright.
Well, we're going to go with that. So what I did here is I played around with the letters for castle, C-A-S-T-L-E. And they're actually present in the first example that I showed. Here's a C, here's an A, the S kind of does that. There's a T, there's an L, and there's an E. And it doesn't matter to me whether they show up in the thing that I complete, but these arbitrary starting points for shapes are just really interesting. And it's a bit like having another artist on the same page with me because the A makes me think of things that I wouldn't when I'm just looking at a rectangular shape saying, okay, a castle, what do I have? And while I'm very fond of stripes and polka dots, using the letter forms pushes me out of my comfort zone for patterns. So here, I'm not going to walk you through the whole process of how did I come up with these, but I do really enjoy typography. I spent 15 years of my career as a graphic designer, so I said a lot of type, but I'm not a calligrapher at all. And so I just want to say that when I'm playing around with type, I literally just write the word and then I might separate them. And I can also block letter. None of this is rocket science, but I test all this out. This is all sketchbook material, upper and lower case. And I don't try to make letters that aren't natural to my own handwriting. Because one of the things that's fun about it is there's a slant to how I make these letters and it's really natural to my hand. So then when I pick up my pen and doodle ideas, it's a really familiar mark. And when I do it with a paintbrush, even more so. So these letters that I've created, and I put this back on so you can see it. I've got a cursive C. I turned the letter A sideways because it's my party and I can do what I want, but I still used it. And then the S is a block letter, but italic. And then T, there we go. The T is that cursive T. That's how I start my name. And the L is visible and the E looks a little bit like a T because I extended it, but there's the E. So the letters are in there, and it's fun to me to turn these every which way and figure out what they can be. So the other thing that
Tara,
Yep.
Tara, I have a question.
Yep.
Someone was asking if the paper is distorted as well as the grid. I noticed the grid kind of tapers down towards the
Oh,
bottom.
yeah. I don't like things that are parallel to the edge because I have a tendency to do that. But the paper is, what is the paper? 9 by 12.
Okay.
It's a square rectangle. It's going to look a little bit distorted because I work on a tilt.
Right.
And I will see. I think I can adjust the camera for that tilt. I hope. Unfortunately, I'm getting a shadow from that. Gotta get it close enough to me that I can do. All right, so that goofy set of arbitrary letters, which I know spell castle, are just going to create some resists. And I taped off a couple areas and I left some areas open. And then the next thing I do, sharpen my pencil so it works. But I'm just going to show you where I've extended lines to get something that's loosely castle-like. So I added a roof line right here, and I have some little turrets here, 2 of them. I extended the line of the E up, and I'll extend this. And let's see what else. So after I get the basic shapes in there, I try to show myself the architecture, or the basic bricks, if you will. And then I'm going to pre-wet. Maybe not. Usually I do. This one's a little different because I have started from white, and because I'm starting from green, I don't usually use green. I don't use a lot of green. That is a stretch. Another thing that I like to do, because I'm plain while I do this, is I will get out, everybody gets tubes of colors here and there. Either we buy them ourselves or they're little party favors at various functions. And then you say, well, what is this color? What am I going to do with it? So I love to use those on things like this. And then I can figure out whether I want to add them to my palette. I want to show you, this is a portrait that I have in progress. And I'm actually using the same green, quite a lot of it, in the boy's face. So the color structure is the same, whether I'm working on a castle or a portrait, and the techniques that I use are the same too. I like to work in layers, and I like to let them dry in between. So
What kind of paper do you use, Tara?
this is Arches. And actually, no, this one is not Arches. The other one is Arches. This one is Fluid, which, what do I think about that? It's not my favorite.
Are they cold press or hot press?
They're both cold press, 140 pounds.
Okay.
So I usually use Arches, and for whatever reason, this demonstration, I did it on a different kind of paper. So we'll see what happens. I set up both of these, and as one is drying, I will be working on the other. And initially I'm just dropping clear water wherever I want my background color to go. And I turn my page upside down because I like to let gravity do the work for me. And then once I've got this top portion where I want it, I'll flip it around and figure out what the rest of it needs. Okay, so to that end, I laid out some colors that I don't ever use. And one of them is, I'm looking here, Lunar Blue. So here we go. I'm gonna try Lunar Blue. Maybe some of you have already tried it. These are all Daniel Smith pigments that I'm working with. I've got, oops, I wet this with my mop, and I'm gonna switch gears here and use my sable, which I really prefer because it gives me both a really juicy mark as well as a very controlled point when I want it. And the way I get that is by how much water I have in the brush. So that's just a little puddle there. But if I take all the moisture out of this brush and go back in here and just load, oh, you can't see that, or can you? Can you see my palette?
A little part of
A
it.
little bit.
Let me see if I can.
We see the blue and the black.
That's what I was hoping, but well, there we go.
That's good.
So when I load it this way, I'm going to get some, there we go. Now you can see it. I'm going to get some load in the tip. And when I load from the side, I'm going to get a really juicy stroke. So I like that it gives me both. Okay. I am going to proceed here. And although I have some guidelines on here, this first, well, in this case, it's actually a second layer, but typically I would work a first layer very wet. I often have 90, 95%, this is for portraits too, of my paper wet when I begin. And it allows me to do really loose aqueous blending on that first layer. And because I'm doing this over the top of a pour, I've already got a pretty loose layer on there, but I want the glow that I get. So I'm working from the top down, and then I don't go back into it and fiddle with it. And I need a little bit more. I find with Daniel Smith colors that I need to lay out fresh color because the binder makes the pigment dry out and fall out of my palette. And I don't like messing around trying to get enough pigment on my brush. I just want it to do what it's supposed to do. So my word for this is I like to let water do the work. Water and gravity. So this is exactly what I do with portraits. I drop whatever wet idea I have into the background first, and I might not do it upside down. And then I go into the foreground, which is head and shoulders of somebody generally. And that allows me to, I think here, just gonna come in. So I switched my blues. Now I've got, I think it is a peacock turquoise. Because as I come down, whatever that lunar blue is very low key. And I want to warm it up as I get down below here. Okay, so then I have a rough outline. And next I'm going to work with my yellows. I don't always use yellow, but feel like using yellow in the middle of this. A lot of green, why not? My camera is doing the best job it can with artificial lighting, but I will tell you, this is a good deal brighter than how it looks on the camera.
Tara, someone is asking if you can move it up just a little bit more. We can't see the bottom.
How's
There,
that?
that's perfect.
Okay.
What
So
kind
now-
of what kind of brushes do you use, Tara?
This is a rosemary number 12 sable. And I also used, earlier, I used a silver black velvet jumbo round small, which is a mop. And those are sizes that I use. Well, the number 12 I use all the time for everything. I just really like it. No matter, even when I'm doing a postcard size idea. And because it holds that point. So here's this very unfamiliar pigment to me, Lunar Blue. And it's doing crazy stuff in a really interesting way. I love that edge. I don't know what it means yet, but okay. And then I have another, now look, what is this? Amethyst Genuine is another party color that was in my pile of party colors, and not something I've ever used. So I'm throwing this purple, which probably has some iridescence in it, if I had to guess.
Tara, someone asked, are the white areas masking tape or what is that?
They're pH neutral artist tape. I don't ever use masking tape because the adhesive in it very quickly seizes up. And I'd like to say that all my bright ideas I get around to finishing right away, but the fact is I don't. So I know that with this tape, I can leave it and nothing weird is going to happen. So, yeah. So I'm just dropping. They're not, like I said, this is not my usual paper, but I'm hoping I'll have time to throw some on the other one as well. And I'll use the same color structure and we'll see how it's different with a different beginning. But what happened, what I noticed happening is that this paper dried off at the edge much faster than I'm used to. So live and learn. So it's, I look at it as an opportunity to, I'm playing with a surface that's already got something on it. I'm messing around with colors that I really have no idea what they do. And I find things out. And then when I'm quote unquote working on serious paintings, I'm I've got the information already. I'm not, I'm just lifting that because I'm gonna throw some of this in here. So this is also how I do the portraits. I start with really simple shapes. And I call this medium value and medium sized shapes. because because that's what it is. I'm not diving into detail yet. That will be 2 or 3 layers along the way. And I think I'll be able to get some color transfer inside these shapes because this is still plenty wet. Yeah, there we go. So that really fuzzy wet into wet edge, that lost edge, is what I love between the background of a portrait and the foreground. So you can see it's starting to do its thing. I have typically, well, it's only in the last 2 years, I have to say, that I have started using a more expanded set of colors because I have a split primary palette that's got 2 blues, 2 reds, and 2 yellows. And I never have to think about how to mix anything because the color, it's so familiar. I can do it in my sleep. But I have all these Daniel Smith colors and I decided to play with them. So this, it's kind of a look ma, no hands moment. If I fall off the bike, I fall off the bike. I'm not crazy about that Lunar Blue. It's just kind of gritty, but good to know what it is. Okay, I need a little.
Tara, somebody has a question about the red. What color is the red?
The red, I have 2 reds on here. One is Crimson Lake, and the other is, that's the pinky one here.
Okay.
And the other is Pyrrole, I always get this wrong, Pyrrole Scarlet. Let me just check. Yep, Pyrrole Scarlet. Let's see. Ooh, really fresh load of Pyrrole Scarlet. I don't have any details drawn onto here. And I definitely do when I'm doing a portrait, I have the shapes on there I can see. I like to use 6B pencils to make my drawings. And the reason I like that is they lift up and mingle and really disappear. But in this case, I don't actually have any detail on there to disappear. All right. I don't use mask as a rule. I am using a resist by putting tape down. But I'm more a fan of holding whites or lifting them. And what I'm doing right now is just picking up my puddles at the bottom of these little taped off areas. They're like little swimming pools. I think I'm gonna do some of this Crimson Lake up here because what I want to do is throw this under a little weight and put some bubble wrap on it. see if I can get a texture transfer. And while that does its thing, I'll throw the same colors on the other background. And I'm also going to tell you a little bit about how I got fixated on castles, because it's not really what you would think I would move from portraits to castles, but there is a reason. Okay, that is going to go under some weight. I'm sure lots of you have tried this, but I have a pre-cut piece of bubble wrap here. It's basically plastic wrap with a texture. Here's a sample of what it looks like when it's dry. Great little polka dots, and I don't have to do any work. And then I'm also going to throw some plastic. The bubbles here are alcohol. I believe the kids that I did this pour with threw salt on it. I think pretty wet because can't see too much anymore. My background is dry, so I won't get any transfer of texture on that. I'm just gonna be right back. I haven't gone away. Okay, I'll get that under weight and I'll come back and check on it in about 20 minutes. Okay. I have to find. Okay, so here's a little process. Right. So this is actually the architect's drawing for the same castle that I've been talking about, that I showed you the photograph of. And it's part of the historic collection. And when I started working on the illustration of the castle, I was just sitting outside doing a plein air watercolor of it. And I asked if there were any drawings in the collection, because last summer, after the protests that followed George Floyd's killing, I offered to do a virtual workshop for the Swedish Institute. They're located in the West Phillips neighborhood, which is one of the neighborhoods that was destroyed or badly damaged, both in the protests. And I wanted to build a workshop around the theme of the castle in the city, but also around the theme of rebuilding. So a third of the proceeds from it went to a community fund, which I understand has helped a women-run preschool get back on its feet. And it's a little fund, but that's where this idea started from, is I wanted to do something. And because I'm an artist and I knew how to teach virtually, this made sense to me. But I wanted the theme to make sense. So the first thing I did was try to do a straight up illustration of it, and it was really not very interesting to me. So I took the numbers 1 through 9 and the letters A through O, U, because there are 29 letters in the Swedish alphabet. And I used them to create all the details of the castle. So that was kind of entertaining, just a doodle. And then I traced, this is at a different scale. I can't tell you why, I must have blown it up. But I traced the central portion of the castle. And if any of you have seen it, it's a really wild piece of architecture. It's beautiful, but Swan Turnblad, who built the castle, basically kind of built a Bongo's dream house. He took every great, that's not going to show up, every great idea that anybody was doing and put it all in one house. And so I was curious to discover that the center of it was actually you know, pretty normal looking. It's absolutely symmetrical and these windows are symmetrical. So that was interesting. So this felt like a starting point. And I often keep, when I'm doing this, I like to work with shapes. I also keep the piece that I cut away, the negative shape and the shape, because it gives me more material to work with. And then I started this castle from, oops, there we go. I created that shape, and then I did what I always do. I threw that crazy grid on there, and then I thought about what the letters could do. And I did not make all these transparencies for you. This is how I work. It helps me build my ideas. And then if I want to try them again, it's there. So you can see how the Turnblad Mansion core structure is the beginning of the castle that I created, which has nothing to do with looking like that, but it was a lot of fun. And it's a little bit easier to see my letters. There's the C, the A, here's the S, the T, the L, and the E is little. Okay, so that's what happened with that one. And often I will do these more than once, just because it's fun or because I have another thing that I want to try. And then I got going on this little shape, which initially I thought of as a greenhouse, but it's sort of an ordinary house shape. And then when I was looking at my materials again, I thought, well, there it is. There's just a really simple, almost the way a kid draws a symbolic house. So I was working on these, and my idea was that love grows here in these houses. So this was the first one, and I tried it with green, and then I tried it again with red, and I actually ended up liking this one better. So another iteration. And then most recently, I started doodling my home is my castle, because that idea was interesting to me. And so here is this shape again, the simple house shape. And these I've created by using the letters for that phrase, my home is my castle. So here is H, O, M, E is, there's that S again, my, there's a Y, C, A, S, T, L, E. And here too, you can't see it, and it's not why I'm doing it. I tried it at night, I tried it by daylight, and then I fiddled around with it, and I had, remember this? I'm gonna turn this off so you can see it. There we go. And I decided I would start this one with the Turnblad Mansion, but see if I couldn't make it less castle-like and more home-like. And here too, I haven't got very far on this, but this is some kind of background from a still life. You can see the bottle where I do background first. And I just chop it up. It's Arches paper. It's a beautiful set of washes, fun shapes. And then I drop this over and see, okay, I kind of like that color structure, and that's going to work. But home is my castle. Those are the letters, and they'll disappear by the time I'm done. But so I've been at this since the middle of last summer, really, building these ideas. And I've offered the workshop more than once with the same idea. And yeah, so that is where this came from. Now I'm going to switch and
So
little
Tara,
blur. Whoops.
Tara, I have a question. This is Art.
Hello, Art.
How do you achieve balance in your paintings so the letters are equally represented, I guess, is my question.
You mean, how do I draw them?
Well, how do you try to get the letters to be equal in terms of their dominance on the painting?
I don't think they are.
Okay,
And
so
yeah.
you're actually emphasizing some letters and
yeah,
de-emphasizing some others.
I think by the time I get done, I don't care. I gotta dump my water. I don't care if, not care. Generally, the letters are no longer visible. They're just, it's like having another artist to collaborate. Basically, the letters are my other artist.
Okay.
Kind of would be, but so sometimes they'll still be visible, but in this instance,
Yep.
yeah, it's really about like a fun balance of shapes as I start. So I mean, I do think about the composition, and that it is another thing that I really enjoy about working this way, is that I can, this one I am not going to pre-wet. What I like about it is it's just a shape, because it really is. Letters are shapes. And
So we're about halfway through the
Okay.
presentation.
all right, that sounds good. So this one has a very different color structure. It's got Prussian blue and ochre, and I think alizarin crimson. And it's the better paper. So I'm curious.
Tara, Linda is wondering, she'd like, she was wondering if you could clarify, using the letters, do you use them to create variety as you're painting rather than?
I do. Yeah, I use them to inspire shapes. They
Okay.
just make me think of things that I wouldn't if I, if I just sit down to draw a castle. I think it's either going to look like the Turnblad Mansion or Disney.
Okay. And then
And-
she said, rather than attempting to incorporate the words in a painting that has a relationship to the words. So,
Well, it definitely does. Yeah, I do like to use a word. I always use a word that has a relationship to what I'm painting. So in this case, castle does.
okay.
Because I'm making a castle. And when I showed the sketch for Home is My Castle, it definitely has, it reflects the content. It's kind of a crazy way to work, but it keeps me happy. I don't know that it's for everybody. And I have taught quite a few workshops in it, so I guess some folks are interested in it. Then I'm just going to switch and not using any of those mystery colors, but I want you to see how this one, I'm going to be able to get a glow out of this one because the paper is better.
And to go on, Linda also would like to know, so you could use a word other than what the painting is about if you felt the shapes were what you wanted.
I suppose you could. I wouldn't do it because it's part of the game that I play. And one of the things that happens when, particularly with the publishing project and with collaboration, is you have to set parameters. You have to say, here's how we're going to proceed. or you can't get anything done. And so I think I have a long habit of working that way. I would say coming from publishing, which is what I did for 15 years, it is a collaboration. You have to play with others. And I really enjoy that. So it's a pandemic. There aren't a lot of people I can actually invite into my studio
Mhm.
at the moment. And this has given me a way to have that, well, to literally have a feeling of being connected to this community, because it's a group of people and a neighborhood that has really nurtured my creativity. And I feel very strongly about giving back what I can, because I'm a privileged person and my neighborhood was not destroyed. So here I am. Okay, I'm just gonna throw. All right, I've got wet all the way around, and I got pretty loosey-goosey throwing whatever I felt like in there. And then I picked up the excess. I use my paper towel I use to pick up these edges when I want them to be a little more. Okay, and then what am I going to do next? I want some glow. I couldn't get any glow the first time around. Let's have it. So the thing that I love about watercolor is the alchemy of that aqueous blend. That is what happens when we do a wet into wet mark. When it just migrates. I absolutely love that. So I make it do it on purpose. I make it play outside the lines, and you can see it happening here. Maybe you can't, I can. Give me a second and I'll hold it up to the camera. I used dioxazine, if I'm saying that right, purple. And it's doing a really cool interaction with those colors. Because it's wet and the inside is dry of this shape that I'm dropping, the color migrates out into the area that's already wet. And some people might call that a bloom. I might get some. And I don't care. Weed. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to paint around the S because I want to drop some green or yellow maybe into it, and I want it to migrate out into this really vivid Pyrrole Scarlet. Yeah, the paper is, there is no comparison. This paper is lovely. So this one is Arches. leave off on this one and go check on the other. Minute. I know that we are pretty newly opening up as a state, but I will say that I had a wonderful day today. I went and saw the watercolors that are at the Swedish Institute right now, and I recommend it. It was stunning work. Stina Wiersen and Bay, oh my gosh, I forget how to say her last name, have a collaborative exhibit that is, well, it is all about aqueous blends. So, Stina does ink and watercolor together, and Bea is a paper artist. So they have I recommend it. You have to get a reservation ahead of time on the website, which is really straightforward to do. I was in the gallery by myself most of the time. I did have a 10 o'clock appointment or a 10 o'clock reservation, but it was just a great experience. So there are some beautiful watercolors over there. It's up through July 11th. So if you are holding out for a vaccine and that comes along, go for it. Right, and I just got one more. I think this wants to be. So this is acting, because the paper is more familiar to me, it is acting the way I expect it to with these blends, which makes me happy. I just realized I missed a piece right here. Okay, I'm going to see what the other one is doing. This one is not going to get any bubble wrap, so. Usually it's close enough. It is. There we go. It's still wet, but I'm going to proceed anyway. Looks like I need a little more drying time, but okay. So at this point, I can continue working with where is it? I can continue working with my sable, but I can also bring this brush, which is a Gray Matters number 6, is sometimes useful. At this point, I'm going to pull the tapes off, which is always fun. And will undoubtedly leak underneath, which is okay. because I'm going to put another layer on top of this. This is the first one like this that I've started from a pour. So it's got much more coverage. Whoops, there we go. And the previous ones. Oh yeah, that paper is crap. Oh, pardon
Looks
my
like a
French.
house, though.
What's that?
Looks like a house.
It does look like a house. That was our goal, right?
Yep.
Okay, so then I am going to bring in,
We've got a comment from someone who says that your work is making me think of Paul Klee,
oh,
imaginative and playful.
well, I say thanks for that. That's, he's amazing. His work is stunning watercolor. I recommend looking at Paul Klee. So I think he's a little more restrained in how he uses color. Okay, so I like these crazy shapes. I call them my gumdrop trees. They end up. And I think the other thing to know about me is that I have been drawing from direct observation and doing photorealism for, I don't know, 45 years. And I love it. It's really interesting. It's my serious work. And when I give myself breaks like this to play, I go back to that serious work with a lot of energy. And I know how to move paint, because all this messing around that I'm doing on these surfaces is, it's pressure free in a way that my portraits, I love doing them, but you know, at the end of the day, they're supposed to look like somebody, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of this, I don't exactly know what it's supposed to look like, but I think of it a little bit like my 1,000-piece puzzle without a box top. A lot of people have been doing puzzles in the pandemic. It's possible it would make a good puzzle now that I think about it. Right, so I'm fond of these trees, and I also like picking up color and dropping it into these wet channels. So I don't necessarily, well, I hardly ever do one color and then leave it. It's an opportunity. So I can pick up some of that purple, tip it in here while it's I do really enjoy writing as well as painting. And I think the other thing that's fun about this way of working, separate from the fact that I started from a word, is that I muck that up. They come from a different part of my brain. And it's almost like I'm not exactly telling myself a story, but I'm inviting one. Right. Enough of that. Oh, there's one more up here. I have to see where those are before I start playing around with the tassel structure. Okay, then what am I going to do here? Ideally, this first layer, oh, second layer, would be a little bit drier, but I'm also, I have angle brushes and I tend to reach for rounds, and I like that I can't, I have all these ways of basically booby trapping my tendency to make right angles and straight lines. You know, the grid isn't right angles, you get the idea. Okay, I think, and it's pretty fun to see, you know, you wouldn't think Pyrrole Scarlet over the top of green could possibly be anything worth looking at. It might not be, we're not done yet. But I do negative painting quite a lot. Pyrrole Scarlet, exterior color, and Hooker's Green, window trim, what could be better? The funny thing is, castles are actually really boring. Not really boring, but color-wise, they're gray. They're some kind of stone. And only the Disney castles have those fun turrets, although they are inspired by a castle in Carcassonne in the south of France. So I can't get, well, I could, but it's just really fun to get these pops of almost iridescent green coming through. And because I just don't paint with it very often, it's good practice for me. All right, what is this going to need? I have just out of range of the camera, my favorite tool for getting the moisture level right in my brush is a recycled diaper. It's lovely absorbency. It's every color imaginable. I used to use paper towel, and then I tried to get, I still use it, but sparingly. I use it to pick up moisture, and I use the diaper because it sucks great quantity of moisture out of the brush, and then I can get that control that I want out of the point. You can pick up just.
So this is Art. I have a question. When you put transparent color on the paper, let's
Yeah.
say over another color, I noticed that you're sometimes pressing down with the brush and sometimes you're a little bit loose with the brush on top. Is that deliberate or am I just seeing something?
I have it might look like I'm pressing down, but I don't. And I don't work back and forth because that stirs up the layer that's underneath, and that's how you get mud. So I'm not a fan of mud. I do like low-key colors, but I don't like mud. And they're two very different things. People think that transparency is just about the colors that you choose. It's about how you apply the paint. And if you let the first layer dry before you put the next layer in, you can kind of get away with anything.
And the other question I have is, have you ever thought about using this technique on other types of architecture besides castle, let's say, or mansions? Let's say modern architecture, modern housing. I'm thinking of, well, everybody always reverts to the Frank Lloyd Wright type of horizontal look design with shadow lines and so forth.
Yeah, I haven't yet. It's a really new series. It's just since last summer, and it really was inspired by the terrible destruction in the neighborhood.
Yep.
And I would say that I am very much driven by inspiration that's personal. So even my portraits are people I know.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I'm related to them. So this subject matter is personal, even though it doesn't seem like it could be. But it was driven by a sincere desire to reach out to this community from which I've received so much.
So we have about 20 to 25 minutes left.
Say that again.
We have about 20 to 25 minutes left in the presentation portion.
All right. That sounds good. I'm just going to keep painting. I said I liked stripes and polka dots. I'm also very fond of chevrons.
Hmm.
Tara, does that design you just made, now it's going outside of the boundary, what I'm seeing as the castle? Or is that lower part also part of the castle?
It's going to be.
Okay.
I think. There isn't really there isn't really a roadmap.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how am I thinking about that? I am thinking that is the trunk of this tree.
Okay.
Where I was going. So what I'm doing is, or what I hope I'm doing, is creating some negative spaces here that help reveal that. Make that solid. and I am starting to do detail. I'm pretty sure I will not get the final layer of this in, but you'll start to see how these, how the shapes, how the negative painting starts to reveal the composition. And it's almost like a little bit, I think, my thinking is a little bit like printmaking, because I think in terms of layers. And I've always enjoyed that aspect of painting, thinking that way. I would not say that I distinguished myself as a printmaker. I'm fascinated with layers. All right, and focusing on this side so it can maybe get far enough along.
I think if you could move it up just a little bit again, we're missing
Yeah.
the bottom.
Sorry.
That's
Okay.
good.
I think we need a front door. One of the things that was great fun, in addition to working in a historic salon, was that I got to hear the tour guides tell the story of the family that built this, not this, but built the Turnblad Mansion. And they each told it in their own way. So it was fascinating. I didn't need to turn on the radio. And you would think that all that wealth made someone really happy, but in fact, they never really lived in the whole structure. And, right. All right, we need, right, I have one more brush that I like at this point because I'm starting to get into drier work. And this is an Escoda Perla, and springy, synthetic. I've probably gone through 6 of them in 2 years. I abuse them, but it's just because I use them a lot. So the 3 brushes that I typically reach for in my portrait work are this one, a mop. Tonight I was using the silver black velvet, jumbo, round, small, and then the sable. I'm trying to negative paint that, and it's not enough. I'm gonna dump a little more color into this. There we go. So there's not enough value contrast to show where that molding around the door that I want. Anyway, I had a lot of time to look at the architectural details, which are from every era and quite a few countries. And no expense was spared. They're beautifully done, but there's just a whole lot of ideas in one structure. So I think that's where my permission to do crazy stuff comes from. Let's see if we can get a little, there's a really distinctive, that is too loaded with paint. Come back here. There's a really distinctive copper roof on the Turnblad Mansion that is a beautiful verdigris, and the scalloped tiles that make the roof are really distinctive. They don't, most of the time when I just do this, I think about this pattern being every row. And I looked at those turrets when I was walking out to the parking lot, and they're every other row, which I don't think I noticed previously. So this is sort of, you know, I'm just making stuff up. It's definitely decorative. And I have places that I get decorative in portraiture, where I get to do what I call a calligraphy. So a more gestural stroke. It's usually in the hair and the clothing, but there's lots of places I can do it where I can play here.
So Tara, we have a question from the audience. Do you find yourself looking at houses in a new way? Looking for interesting
I do.
details?
Yeah, funny you should ask. I really do. I look at colors, I look at details. I'm not an architect. I wasn't ever entertained by the notion that I should study that. But I do love architecture. And one of the things that's funny to me is that particular area of Minneapolis was known, I don't know if it still is, as the Golden Mile. And every name that we recognize as a founder in the Twin Cities had a mansion on that row. And there are very few that still stand, and this is one of them. Many of them have been converted to other purposes, but quite a few of them have just been torn down, because that's what we do in America. We don't build over the top of old things. We get them out of there. But this was bequeathed in perpetuity to house the Swedish American Institute. American Swedish Institute is what it became. And so it's still here today. Okay, I'll have to come back to those when they're a little bit drier. What else? We need some.
The two that you just painted, Tara,
Yeah.
I'm seeing the fairy slippers that are under the house that fell.
Yeah, sure. That's it. That's what I meant. These two there are details all over the structure that are really quite curious and delightful. And I don't think any of them look like fairy slippers, but I'm kind of riffing on them. I've never done any kind of folk painting, but there too, I really admire those traditions. They're just so fun. This is looking a bit like my aloe vera. We paint what we know.
Mm-hmm.
That's telling me I have just a few minutes left. So, Art,
Yes.
when we get to the question and answer, do you mind if I just keep doing this and answer questions? Because I can do it.
No, that's fine. Usually we put the person asking the question on speaker view, but maybe, I don't know, would we change that, Deidre? Or,
Yeah, I think if Tara wants to keep working and just know that people will be asking questions, I think that's fine.
okay,
I'm totally fine with that. And
yeah, so we'll just sort of interweave the QA with what you're doing. And,
Yeah.
but we won't put the person asking the question on speaker view.
they won't get their 15 minutes of fame. That's not
No.
fair.
No,
Sorry. Okay. Well, I'm ready whenever you are. So
Okay.
okay.
Art, did we ask this question from Patty Schmidt about her grandson?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Patty is saying her grandson Wilder wants to know if you ever put a garage in your castles.
Ha. Yeah, it'd be a really good idea. The Turnblad Mansion had a carriage house and a garage. And the owner who built it was one of the first he owned one of the first Model Ts. So yeah, that'd be a really good idea, but I didn't leave room. I'll have to work on that the next one I do.
The next version, right?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for that idea. Maybe you could do one. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Wilder would love to do one.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that
Maybe Patty can do one with Wilder.
the looking at your creation, I think children would just absolutely love imagining and writing a story about who lives in that castle.
Well, that's good because I've been too busy doing the castles and I haven't got around to that part. I could use help with that.
Yeah. All right. Just a message to everybody. If you have a question for Tara at this point about anything, about her other works, her portraits, about her creativity, her materials she uses, anything that you'd like to know at this point, if you have a question, just send a chat message to Art or myself saying you'd like to ask a question, and then we will ask you to unmute and ask your question of Tara. So or if you'd like Art or myself to ask the question for you, you can send us the question. Either way is fine. And Tara, I have a question. I'm wondering if there's any idea of the Swedish Institute using your castle creations in any way for a display or publicity or anything. I think they're just charming.
Oh, thanks. Well, I think they could justifiably be a little tired of me because they did a major exhibition inspired by our book that just came down.
Oh, okay.
And there's a new exhibition up. But I have continued to show these to the folks in the development area. And my idea is they auction them off and they support that community fund that I.
Great idea.
Yeah, because I'd really, and in particular, I'd like it to benefit women and minorities, and there's so much need. It's going to take a long time to rebuild.
Yeah.
And like I said, my neighborhood is intact, and when I drive over there down Franklin, from my spot in St. Paul, it's still just, yeah, it's really sobering. And
Mhm.
I know I'm really blessed, both by all the opportunities I've had and also that I can.
So we have another question. The question is, are you trying to use complementary colors next to each other?
Well, did I? What do you think? I think I've got everything everywhere. I do have a very strong fondness for compliments. I do. So it does not surprise me that this dominantly green idea is getting red where I want to call attention to it. But I don't think it's quite that deliberate.
I thought the other painting that you started had a really nice blend of complementary colors.
Yeah. I wish I'd done that one first, but if wishes were horses, then beggars would fly. They didn't. Did this one. I can pick that up though and see how that dried because I think it's probably pretty fun.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see it.
All right, I'll do that. And Art, since you're raising that issue, one of the reasons that I do more than one is I'm curious about something. So sometimes that's something that didn't quite work out. But a lot of times it's like, I wonder what would happen if I did it this way. And the only way to know is to do it that way. So I do like having more than one going. So here's the other one. Oh yeah, those are really fun blends. That one's going to call me back. And that's how I think about it. I do it with I have in any given category, and frankly, I have too many categories now. But back when I was teaching full-time, I would make sure I had at least 3 things in my studio, one of which was at a finishing stage, nearly finished, one that was totally at the beginning, and one that was somewhere in the middle. Because when I pay attention to my energy and how engaged I feel with an idea, and if I'm not feeling it, and there's a difference between not feeling it and being afraid I'm going to mess it up. I get that too. We all do. But not having the energy for it, I'm not going to do good work. So by having more than one at different stages, I was able to make really efficient use of the precious time that I had to work in my studio. And at the same time, I never had an excuse not to keep working. So I think I started 2 here, and I'll come back to that one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when, but I definitely will. I just realized I haven't used any gray. I need some gray.
So I have another question. Do you ever put modern day accoutrements into your castles, like solar panels or TV dishes?
Definitely.
Or
Yeah, I haven't done that yet. And I have, I've got some other structures, smaller playful houses that I've done using numbers, because I like to do, take the number 1 through 9 and figure out how many different kinds of window details do those numbers make me think of. I didn't do that with this one. And so I've got some with those, but they don't have solar panels. Clearly I need to get going on my Paris Accord now that we're back in it.
Yep.
I have a couple of questions that have come in from Barb. She's wondering, what brand of paints do you prefer using, since you seem not to like the Daniel Smith paints that you...
I love the Daniel Smith paints. What I have to do is I can't just pick up any old palette. I have to lay out fresh paint. I love the Daniel Smith paints.
Okay.
But the other answer is I also really love my limited palette of M. Graham, because it has honey as a binder and the paints are semi-moist and they never go completely solid and drop out of the palette. So there's an efficiency about that I like, as well as the color structure is really straightforward for me to use. But these, this palette is dominantly transparent colors, not entirely. And one of the goals that I have in my portrait work is to work a little bit lighter, which sounds funny because most people have trouble getting their darks, but I'm not afraid of the dark. And as a result, I tend to go a little too dark, too fast. So my goal when I set this up was to coax myself into thinking about that. Yeah, and it's kind of working. So the one that I showed you is at that stage. Let's see, I need some of these. The fairy slippers need to have some little doodah.
Linda is wondering, she has some questions about the paper you're using.
This one is fluid and I'm not liking it.
Yeah, she said it seems the 140-pound paper that you used for the nearly finished painting is less welcoming to the water and paint than the other paper you were using.
Yep, that's absolutely true. So it's just another one of those deals of, I know I don't even know how this is in my collection, but as I said, I do a lot of collaborations with different people, and it's an inexpensive paper, but I would not stock it for my own work. So I just used it because I had a pour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's research. It's the same as, to me, it's the same as the benefit that I get figuring out that I don't really need to use Lunar Blue again. I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Here, look at this. It does this sediment it's not granulation. It's something else. I don't know. But it's not floating my boat. So that's good to know. For me, it's good to know before I'm doing it for a serious painting. I know you can't see the bottom, but I'm going to go up here and I'm going to work with, whatever that amethyst, what was that? Amethyst Genuine has sparkle in it. I didn't know that. All right.
Lynn says, now the witch's slippers look like gnomes peeking out. Swedish gnomes.
Well, there. I think it's probably a hazard. I'm probably going to, and I am Scandinavian, but it's the other Scandinavian. It's not Swedish. So, though I did have lots of people tell me that a couple hundred years ago, it was the same thing. So, yeah, so because I've worked with so many of these objects and the decorative elements, I think it's sort of gone, I forgot to do this one. I think it's kind of gone skin deep somehow.
So Leanie has a question. It appears you let your colors mix on the paper. Do you ever mix them on your palette?
Yeah, I do. Whoever asked that is extremely in. Lainey?
Yep.
Yeah, you are very observant. I know that. I do love to mix on the paper, and I do crazy bright on my earlier layers, and with subsequent layers, I bring down the, the trashiness of the, what I joke feels a little bit like My Little Pony colors, but I bring that down with subsequent layers. I do mix in my palette. For example, this gray that I'm using, because I said, oh, I don't have any gray. And I am not under the time clock thing. I don't quite have enough time to get it using my layers. So, but I do mix some in the palette. I'm much fonder of letting things happen on the paper. It's interesting to me.
She was also wondering what the name and size of your detail brush is.
This is a Gray Matters number 6. And I think this is another one of those things that came into my studio in a gift package, and I haven't used it until I started this series because it allows me to doodle pretty freely. Otherwise, I don't ever use this in portraits. I only use the number 12 Sable, the number 10 Escoda, and some kind of mop. So I'm definitely getting into tiny detail now. And that is, that's the last layer in my portraits as well. I don't deal with eyelashes and irises until the very last layer.
So the mop in your portraits, was that the number 12 black velvet?
No, it's the number 12 is my sable,
Okay.
and that's a Rosemary and Company sable. And the mop that I had tonight, I have some squirrel mops, but this is a silver black velvet.
Okay.
So workhorse. Okay, over here, I need a little, needs a little something. Because I want to be able to see. Not very much. So considering that this started completely green, there's a fair amount of color on it now.
Yep.
And I know I keep saying this, but it's a lot brighter on my board than it is on the screen. The best we can do with the incandescent lights. Okay, what else? Let me think. Does this need?
Tara, are there other artists that you are inspired by, whether it would be an old master or someone who's painting contemporaneously?
Yeah, I've always loved Matisse because of his figurative work and his work ethic. And then the other thing that's distinctive about him is he came from a textile family, and he's said to have had 1,000 textiles, and he never, when he traveled, he took them with them so that he could style his models and still lifes with the textiles that he loved.
Oh.
And I mean, that's pretty awesome level of obsession. I just love that. And I have been accused of being fairly detailed. I also come from I don't come from a textile family, but my first degree was in textile design. So I do really love patterns.
Mhm.
But they're more fun to do with paint than for me than they are to design. I have absolutely no interest in designing anything digitally. I loved it. I did book design, primarily cover illustration and book design for 15 years, and that was great. And at 45, I felt like my life was going to be in front of a screen forever. So I got out from in front of the screen and I went back to graduate school, which is where I rediscovered my watercolor brushes and paper. And I came out the other side and ended my graphic design practice and became a professor. So, and it's sort of funny to me now that because of the pandemic, I have had to get back in front of a screen. Didn't hurt me. But it was my goal. One of the things that I loved and still do is I'm seated right now, just because of the limitations of what the camera will capture. But left to my own devices, I really love to stand and paint. And I don't know if that's just all those years that I sat, or I like the results better. But I do feel like painting with my whole body just gives me better results. And I can feel that better when I'm standing than when I'm seated.
So Barb Carriger has a comment that the patterns in the castle look like a Matisse painting.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah, I mean, he worked, I don't know if he died with the scissors in his hand, but when he could no longer stand, he started doing those cutouts. He collaborated with ceramicists and tapestry, and obviously did his own painting. So he was just had this really rich creative practice that didn't hold still. He pretty obviously didn't retire, really.
Yep.
And theoretically, I did 4 years ago, but I'm doing what I love. So it's still pretty active. And I hope that I can hold a brush and stand up and paint as long as I want to. But if that's not the case, I'll think of something else. I wish that the color was better because this little passage is really beautiful. And this is one of those areas where it's too similar. So I'm going in there with a different color, and I'm negative painting to find the window molding, but also to separate it from one wing from the other wing.
So Lynn Middleton Kohler has a question, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase it by saying, when you broke away from the graphic design element and really started painting with your watercolors, what made you do that? And why did you pick that up? And I guess another question I would have is, why do you, or how often do you paint? I mean, how much of it is it a part of your life?
Right now?
Yes.
Oh, constantly. I definitely paint every day. I should be limited to my studio since it's right here at the back of my lot, but I have palettes and paper and sketchbooks in my house too, because sometimes I'm lazy and it's cold and it's below zero and I don't want to walk out here.
Yep.
So I don't know if I should even admit this, but when I wake up in the morning, I drink my tea and I do my writing, I do my sketching, I doodles, and I am in a nearly all white bed. And I really do have watercolor and ink going. I have a very tolerant spouse who is messier than I am, so that's a bye. But yeah, it's my joy. I do some other things. I don't just paint. A lot of those things have been curtailed by the present moment, like everybody else's life. And I feel really lucky that I have other things I could switch gears and do. But I definitely paint. I paint and draw all the time. And I love ideas. So I'm not kidding when I say I think about what my questions are and I follow my curiosity. And if I wake up and my curiosity is, wow, that amaryllis is so beautiful. How do I make that pink? You know, that's what I'll do. And it doesn't have to, I'm not under the restriction of having it make sense for anybody but me. So like that. Somehow we have to know that that's where we go in. I think I said I was going to play around up here a little bit, and I have a little bit of time. I will. And you can cut me off when you need to turn off the. I hope this isn't a disappointment that I didn't put my face back on there, because I wanted to get this a little bit further, because it just starts to get interesting at the doodle stage, I think.
How do you know when you're done?
Yeah, that's an eternal question, right?
Right.
I do know, and I would say this, I say this as a juror. You may have heard me say this because I think I wrote a bit about it in the newsletter. But really excellent work is a three-legged stool, and none of the legs are wobbly. One leg is the technique, is absolutely on the money. Another is the composition rocks. And it's not, for me, it's not good enough to just have a great composition that's lively and technique that's perfect. I need ideas, because I love ideas. And so I think about what is my idea as I begin a piece, and you kind of know by now what my idea was, right? I know that I've succeeded at it if my technique and my composition support that. And ideas can change based on where you put things and how you paint. One of the things that's fun about doing different backgrounds and, basically taking the same idea and playing with it on yet another time is that the mood of these really changes based on the color structure is a huge part of that. And until I add solar panels and garages, I'm pretty much doing face forward castles. And I will say I have ideas for verticals. I showed you one, but they don't fit under my camera for zooms very well. So they haven't, I think they haven't had a fair share because I've mostly been on camera. But for example, presenting a castle in a vertical format is a completely different feel. And then the ground and the sky become a really active character in what's going on here. And this is, the best little squat castle I can think of for tonight. It's happy colors. I have a terrible confession to make. I am a native Minnesotan, and I don't paint snow. There's a lot of it. It's not that I don't know how, but what I love about winter, in particular, evil sub-zero winter, is that I have absolutely no temptation to go outside and do something. Go for a walk, hang out. If I lived in paradise, I would never get any work done. And so 6 months out of the year, I can count on really great focus because there isn't really a better idea. I don't have a place in a warm place. And it wouldn't matter this year. So that practice of doing that has meant that I'm not actually looking out the window in the winter. I do a lot of plein air work and location sketching, however you think about that, sketching from direct observation in the growing season, or the above 50 degrees is how I think of it. And I do have a couple of what I hope are going to be in-person regional workshops scheduled. They were scheduled last year. They've been rescheduled. And first up is coming up August 9th through the 13th at the Grand Marais Art Colony. I'll be teaching a zigzag sketchbook, which will be a combination of observation and I do some writing prompts. I think that's much better when we can see that dot pattern, don't you?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
great.
So I'm just gonna reach over here for I'm gonna flip my camera back on. Well, no, it is on. I forget. My face is off, so we don't go away. I probably have too many of these, but some of you may even have done some of these with me in the past. But this is the zigzag format, and that's literally what it does. It stretches out to 40 inches, but it's collaging, not literally, because I'm linking one watercolor idea to another using watercolor and ink, but they overlap each other in sort of a collage-like way. And yeah, so that I've done that one 3 years, and it didn't happen last year. You know why? So that is that one. And then in September, I'll be at Dillman's in Lac de Flambeau, Dillman's Art Retreat, September 12th through the 16th, and I'll be doing a portrait workshop there. And October 25th through the 28th, for the first time, I'll be at the Peninsula School of Art, Fish Creek, and I'll be doing figure in the landscape. Because I really enjoy figures. I'm gonna put this down. There we go. You can still, it's green, but
You know,
it's got a new life, even with the bad paper.
yeah, we're almost done. Any other questions from the audience? This has been really great.
Oh, you're so kind.
You know, your work also reminds me of the Fauve artist to some degree with the use of the color.
The wild color. That's my Minnesotan in winter.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Andre Durain, who was a great artist.
Yes.
And actually Matisse started with them, but kind of broke away.
Yep. No, so I don't really have I mean, I can think of artists that I admire, but somebody asked that question and I didn't elaborate. When I look for ideas, I go for walks, or I go to a museum, or the other thing I do when I can, and there's not a pandemic, is I'm a partner dancer, which means I do any kind of Cajun, Zydeco, Lindy, salsa, merengue, whatever music I can find, wherever I can find it. And I love the music and the dance and the figures. So my ideas come from the connections in my life, the life I lead. And I guess if I sit down and start behaving myself, I won't have anything to make art about.
Well, thank
So-
you, Tara. This has been
Thank you.
very good. Maybe we could all unmute and give her a round of applause.
I'll try to
that
find
possible?
myself. I think I turned me off.
Thank you, Tara. That was wonderful.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tara.
You're very kind.
Thank you.
I just realized I matched this painting.
Okay.
All right, try some castles.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.